right. I just wanted to start out, first of all, just by thanking Dr. Arians and Dr. Hill, who couldn't be here today, but just so thankful that they set up this entire week of conversations for us, because just even the planning and preparation for this week has been so rewarding and enriching, both personally and professionally for me. So I appreciate that we were able to bring this together. Also, Dr. Clanton, you're a great colleague. I love working with you. And I realized so much of what I'm about to say correlates almost exactly with what you did. And we didn't plan this at all. We really didn't. Also, I just have to mention, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Please tell him happy birthday on your way out. All right, so Dan was talking about, Dr. Clanton, I apologize, was talking about religious studies, and I'm going to talk about interfaith studies. And we're going to talk about how those intersect and how they are different. I personally identify as spiritually open, which sounds weird to start that right off the bat, but those are the spaces that I'm in. We're often told, don't talk about religion and politics. Those are the topics in polite conversation you avoid around the Thanksgiving table. Well, avoiding those conversations is what got us where we are. So because of these interfaith conversations that I'm in, the spaces I'm in, that's where I start. Now, Dr. Clanton talked a lot about myth and deep story. And I want to draw a connection to that, to the concept of narrative identity, which also comes from sociology. And that is the distinction between these two different disciplines. So primary distinction. So religious studies is concerned with religious traditions, the history of those traditions, the dogma, the doctrine, how this religion is practiced in this country and how it's practiced in this country. Those are the things and the questions that religious studies is asking. Interfaith studies asks about narrative identity, which is, who am I? What are the stories that I tell myself, about who I am? And what are the stories that I, as an individual, tell other individuals about who I am? And that is your beliefs and values. So interfaith studies is mostly, and interfaith relationships are concerned with relationships between individuals. There's also a component of communal identity. And so when you talk about the narrative identity of a community, specifically a religious community, you're talking about those practices that happen in groups to help reinforce what that group believes, what they care about, educate members about those common shared beliefs. These things are important also as we talk about some of the dangers to democracy, like Dr. Clanton was outlining, because that common identity is how you call someone back in when they start being tempted to pull out and go towards extremist values. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm not even going to tell you what religion it comes from, because that's not important. There's examples of extremism in every major religion. There was a TED Talk that I listened to, and this woman was incredible. And she said that in her community, there was a young man who was being tempted by an extremist ideology. Mostly it was recruitment happening over the internet, happening through chat rooms. And the community realized it and got him connected back into that group. Invited him to join the youth group, invited him to start volunteering at that community. And it pulled him back in and helped him resist that ideology. So communal identity and individual identity, both of these things are very important. There is a long history of interfaith cooperation in the United States, which is the most religiously diverse nation in the world. And this is sometimes a surprise to people. So one of the questions, there's an interfaith literacy quiz that I sometimes use in class and that we put on the list of resources for you if you'd like to check it out. And one of the questions is, who was the first US president to host an iftar celebration at the White House? Now, an iftar is the breaking fast celebration that Muslims partake in. So who was the first president? Think maybe in your head for just a second. Who do you think that might be? It It was Thomas Jefferson. Now, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who is a Jewish leader and a theologian, and part of the reason I'm quoting him today is because he was amazing, but also as a show of interfaith solidarity, I'm sitting next to my Jewish colleague. So he was an amazing leader and theologian who walked arm in arm with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the Voter Rights March in 1965. And he said, in spite of fundamental disagreements between religions, there is a convergence of some of our commitments, of some of our views, tasks we have in common, evils we must fight together, goals we share, a predicament afflicting us all. Now, things I get asked the most as an interfaith educator who's now been at Doane for 5.5 years. Does interfaith mean that I have to believe that all religions or beliefs are equal and true? No. You can still believe that your religion is the one true way, the one right path, because if you didn't believe that, it wouldn't be the religion that you're practicing, right? But you can still make those connections with others in this nation as co-citizens, as co-collaborators, as co-visionaries for what we want our shared diverse democracy to look like. It doesn't mean we have to agree on all of our theology. Second most common question is, so wait, how do I want to start having interfaith conversations. I want to get over that hurdle of being kind of nervous about it, but how do I do that? What's the first thing that I say? And usually depending on who it is, I might joke with you and say, well, I wouldn't suggest starting with, hey, I'm so-and-so and nice to meet you. So what do you think happens when we die? If you want some suggestions for some lighter interfaith topics, I brought a handout today. This is shared values bingo. I've done this in classes before. This is just, it has a ton of general questions in it. And it's great as an exercise. It's also great as just conversation starter ideas. So there's a pile of them over there. There's a pile of them in the back by the desserts. Feel free to grab those and just start thinking about what those conversations might look like. What I want to share with you next are 3 action steps. These are the things that we can do together right now to help foster a more inclusive and diverse democracy and a stronger, more cohesive community here at Doane as well. First of all, vote your values. We all have the right and the civic responsibility to vote for elected representatives on issues that align with our individual beliefs and values. Notice that I said, though, we all have the right. One religion or ideological perspective should not dominate the public space, since we are co-citizens of this nation. Now, there was an evangelical manifesto that was written and published by a group of evangelical Christian leaders in 2008. And I want to share that with you. Our commitment is to a civil public square, a vision of public life in which citizens of all faiths are free to enter and engage the public square on the basis of their faith, but within a framework of what is agreed to be just and free for other faiths too. Thus, every right we assert for ourselves is at once a right we defend for others. Okay, second action step. Look for opportunities to create both bonded and bridged social capital. More sociology terms, right? So bonded social capital means relationships within your in-group. So the people that you share common beliefs and values with. Now, this could be a religious community, or for a secular perspective, this could be your athletic team, your book club, those cohesive in-group that you form. Yes, strengthening your own religious, secular, and spiritual practices and relationships is the way that we get to better interfaith cooperation. And here's how. When you're strong in who you are and what you care about and what you believe, you are fully bringing yourself into that interfaith conversation. You are better able to represent what you care about and listen fully to what someone else cares about. That leads us to bridged social capital. So what that means is relationships formed between bonded social groups towards mutual goals or projects in the greater community. So things like this, the football team and crew decided to get together and host a fundraiser or host like volunteer for a service project. Okay. Now there's some intergroup education that occurs along the way. And that's really important. The members of each group learn about each other, and their appreciation for each other increases. Communities with high levels of bridged social capital, so that intergroup cooperation, experience reduced incidents of religiously motivated violence and bias incidents because of those strengthened cohesive bonds. Third action step, be intentional about building relationships with people who have different beliefs and values than you do. Start a conversation. One study showed that relationships and positive attitudes about religious difference are correlated. For example, only 32% of people who did not know a Muslim expressed positive attitudes towards that religious community. Of those who did personally know a Muslim, 56% had positive attitudes, nearly a 25-point difference, all from knowing one person. The same study reported approximately a 16-point difference for individuals who identified as Mormon. And I can share the study, I'm forgetting the rest of the numbers, but that all of that only from knowing one person who's a member of that group. The same study demonstrated that when your favorable views of one religious group increases, your attitude towards additional marginalized religious groups increases. So it's a compounding effect. This social scientific data is so powerful. It's one of the things that I love to share because it proves that we do, as individuals, we do have the power to make quite the impact in our communities. Make a new friend, make one new friend, start one conversation, and you could have an impact for all of us. My final thought for you today about having those interfaith conversations, try to be transparent and authentic. You don't need to be an expert on your own religious tradition in order to have an interfaith conversation. That's one of the worries I hear sometimes. People are like, okay, I'm Catholic, but I don't know all the stuff. All the history, all the doctrine. You don't need to, okay? You're not a representative for all of it. You're speaking for yourself. What do you do, for that example, as someone who's Catholic? What is your prayer life like? Do you go to Mass every Sunday? How do you express it? Most importantly, be respectful of others' beliefs and values by speaking for your own and not misrepresenting another. Sharing inaccurate information about religious beliefs or what someone else's political views might be hurts all of us. If you don't know something about a religious tradition or community and you want to learn, you're welcome to reach out to Dr. Clanton or myself. I'm speaking for him because I know he would agree to this. And if you don't know something about your friend or your colleague's beliefs and practices, ask them directly. They'll have a better idea than we would. We can speak generally, right? But it's really those individual conversations that are especially powerful. So be brave, vote your values, get connected with groups that share your beliefs and those that don't, and build relationships with people that are different from you.